I can't say that there was any like specific instance in which there was like a light bulb that went off. I think it just was sort of the natural progression of me having grown up being very outdoorsy and very engaged with my environment. You know, I used to play in a herring run growing up that I now maintain as an adult. But playing in freshwater, saltwater, woodlands, wetlands, everywhere outside was always a humongous part of my upbringing. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of always thought that I would do something outside, but I saw Jaws at the ripe old age of 7 and became completely enamored with sharks. Essentially decided at a very young age that I wanted to study reproductive cycles in great white sharks. Not at all. Well, I shouldn't say not at all. I get to deal with sharks from time to time in my current employment, but not exactly where I ended up landing. But it was the driving factor behind me pursuing a degree in marine biology. I was a graduate of Barnstable High School in 1999, and then I went on to UMass Dartmouth and pursued a 4-year degree in marine biology from there. After I left there, I applied for many jobs at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Got in some second interviews for some of like the lower level positions, but never ended up getting offered a job. And took a job that paid significantly less as a seasonal shellfish technician in the town of Barnstable's natural resource division. And from there, I spent a little under 3 years growing oysters and quahogs as part of the town's propagation program. And in 2009, I applied for a full-time position as a natural resource officer, for which I was hired. And then in 2016, I became the shellfish constable of the town of Barnstable, and in 2019, became the senior natural resource officer here in Barnstable. We like to say that we're owned by the moon. Our schedule revolves around when low tide is. So during low tide, you're always patrolling, whether that's checking people recreationally shellfishing, aquaculturists who are bringing in product, or people in our wild fishery, commercial harvesters, and really just maintaining compliance that upholds, you know, public health and safety. And then we also do endangered and threatened species monitoring, which for us is a diamondback terrapin Head Start program, currently looking at where osprey nests are being set up in places that are not good for osprey nests to be, monitoring our piping plover populations and our tern populations that come in, and anything else as needed. We do cold stun response of sea turtles in the winter months, and we patrol all conservation areas for illegal vehicle use, dumping, camping, fires. We check people hunting throughout all of our hunting seasons. We check people fishing, both freshwater and saltwater. Our jobs are so heavily focused on habitat protection and resource protection and animal protection that we take, you know, those aspects of it very seriously. So whether it is educating on sustainability of recreational harvest of shellfish, trying to get people to understand, you know, why we have limits for things in place that protect the resource as a whole, why it's important to learn to coexist with wildlife in your yard, because even though you have those established property lines, they have theirs too. And, you know, protection of our very fragile coastal habitat that, you know, on Cape Cod and many areas we're on the threat of losing, is extremely important to us. Management of our herring runs is also something that we take extremely seriously. They're a population in decline. All of our runs are very small streams and require routine maintenance in order to provide passage for them annually. So, you know, any opportunity for me to be outside and have a dialogue with somebody that makes them look at their environment in a way more so that I do is, I think, a great benefit and my absolute favorite aspect of this job. So it's, we're very much a behind the scenes kind of people. So that's why that kind of public engagement is so, important, because it helps people understand that, we are the stewards for, your local environment, and that's important because, every animal, every plant, whether it's poison ivy, or mosquitoes, all do serve, their purpose and their place. And getting people to understand that definitely helps them understand why we're important to have as wardens, and as protectors of that. Over the years, I've contracted with a couple of women who take absolutely amazing wildlife photos, and we've been able to create educational signage using actual pictures of chicks with their mother, of a female nesting and incubating her eggs, of an exclosure, and explaining what those types of things are, to give people kind of something real and tangible to look at, because you see this big area that's fenced off and you don't even, most of the time, unless you're trained, see the tiny birds that are hanging out inside of there. So, giving them those fun facts about the animals and providing them with something that they can look at and putting really a face rather than like a drawing to that name, definitely drives more curiosity. I would say, when I came into work with the department, the Sandy Neck Beach Park manager, Nina Coleman, who is now the director of natural resources, humongous inspiration. And my boss at the time, who was the shellfish technician, Christine Clark, was in the position for a very long time, was one of the first women doing that type of work in the state. And really, she's a town councilor now, and has really, the two of them really helped instill just a solid work ethic and the kind of mentality that, even though I'm a female, I can do everything just the same as anybody else can, and oftentimes I'm more organized. I mean, I can say, there's probably not a lot of people who just on a random day at work while on shellfish patrol got pulled off in a 13-foot boat to babysit a 15-foot baby right whale, actively breaching through lots of lobster traps off of Sandy Neck Beach Park while waiting for the Coast Guard to get there. So, there's those kinds of instances that pop up in my work, oddly more often than not, that make it an extremely memorable position to hold. I can proudly say that when I first started as a natural resource officer in 2009, just finding a female's uniform in OD green, or olive drab green, as is required for us to wear, extremely difficult. They had ones in blue for postal service workers. They had ones in black for women police officers. Women in this type of enforcement field was not that common even a decade ago. Since then, the women as shellfish constables and women as natural resource officers has really exploded, especially locally. There's definitely a push, I think, for women or amongst women to be more present in our sort of green and blue economies than there was before. And there's a drive from women in science to be protective of their environment, which a lot of the time gives opportunity to these types of positions to be held by women, which is great. So definitely seen an increase. And they do now make a lot of uniforms in OD green for women.